You are listening to Growing Up in America the Way It Is. This is a rebroadcast of our live episode, which airs every Wednesday at 9 a.m. Central on 90.1 FM KPFT Pacifica Radio here in Houston, Texas.
Looking out a dirty old window, down below the cars in the city go rushing by. I sit here alone and I wonder why. Friday night and everyone's moved. I can feel the heat, but it's soon.
All right, welcome to Growing Up in America the Way It Is here on 90.1 FM KPFT Pacifica Radio. I am your guest co-host, Becky Quintanilla, here with fellow guest co-host, the fabulous Lynn Lucas, Associate Director of Early Childhood Education with Children at Risk. Hi, Lynn. How are you doing?
Hey, Becky. It's so exciting to be here with you this morning.
Yes, it's such a nice morning, too. Really nice in Houston, at least.
Oh, my gosh. It's good. It's going to be so hot here today. Are you ready for the 100? It's going to be like 102 degrees in DFW.
Yeah, well, the morning is usually better than like mid-afternoon, so happy to have that for a little bit. For those of you who are new to our program, Growing Up in America, is a discussion on our children, public policy, how do we as a city and community do when it comes to taking care of all of our kids. The radio show is a production of Children at Risk, a nonprofit organization dedicated to research, public policy, law, and collaborative action on behalf of Texas youth. And every week, we aim to fill the same 60 minutes with a lively discussion on children of Texas with experts on the quality of life for our children. Oh, and so we have a great guest this week, right, Lynn?
We have some fabulous guests this week, and I cannot wait to get to know them and their issues a little bit better.
Right. So first up, we're going to have Ms. Caroline Roberts. She's a Senior Director of Public Policy and General Counsel with Children at Risk to give us a little bit of the legislative update centered on opportunity youth and young adults. We'll hear from special features, some of like our regular guest, Rebecca George with Hip Speak, as well as our regular host, Dr. Bob, who will give us a travel update as he is many time zones away. And of course, we would be remiss to not mention our favorite Dr. Data, Dr. Chris Kalesa, Child Health Policy Scholar with Rice University's Baker Institute. And our number today is 45%. I wonder what that could be.
45%. So maybe it has something to do with like birds. I like there's a lot of migration with birds happening right now. Maybe it's a bird related thing, like 45% of birds. I don't know. What do you think, Becky?
You know what? I've never thought of birds. But that's getting. I want to say something around allergies. I've had a lot of bad allergies this season, so I want to say 45% of citizens in Texas or just people in Texas have allergies this time of year.
Oh, that's a good one. That's a very good one. I think I'm going to go with yours since I've been suffering from allergies too lately.
All right. Well, I guess we'll have to find out later. And closing us out, we'll have Jenny Walker, Executive Director, Literacy Texas, to talk about literacy and all things advocacy. And I can't wait to get in. So let's welcome in Miss Caroline Roberts.
Hi,
Caroline. How are you?
good. How are you?
Doing good. Me and Lynn were just talking about the weather today, and how it's been changing. It feels good this morning. So we'll see how this heat wave will hit us later today.
Caroline.
Oh, is a heat wave later today? My son will be so sad. I have to stay inside.
No, sorry about that. I was just talking about my allergies, and there I go with my Caroline. Welcome. It's so good to see you to hear from you this morning. So, Caroline, you came to us, with some interesting experience and interests, and you focus on opportunity youth at Children at Risk. And so, I'm just curious, like, what a word! What is opportunity youth? What does that mean? And why is it an issue that's so important?
Yeah, absolutely. So opportunity youth are young people ages 16 to 24 who are not employed and not in education. Originally, they were called disconnected youth, and when providers talk to young people, they wanted to be take on a term that was more positive, like opportunities, because there is such an opportunity in reconnecting these young people. And it's an
So
issue because, oh, go ahead.
well, I was just curious, what were the positive wording as opportunities? What was do you remember what some of the older terms were?
Oh, it was disconnected youth.
Oh, disconnected. Okay, thank you.
Yeah. So that like asset mindset, right? That these are assets that we're bringing back into the community, which I think is really beautiful. And then it's so important because we need that continued workforce, but then also for young people, when they have these disconnections in that critical period. We worked with the Ray Marshall Center at UT Austin to actually look at long-term wage effects, and at 28, those that had experienced persistent disconnection were making just over $20,000 on average, which at that salary, you're really going to struggle to meet basic needs. So
That's hardly
it's
a
a really
livable
critical
wage.
period. Yeah. Oh, I mean, I don't see how you could survive on that, right? So it's such a critical period to really get someone on a pathway. We also know about this population that, basic needs are oftentimes a big part of why they disconnect in the first place. So, SNAP, health insurance, housing, health and mental health, all of these are big reasons as to why a young person might need to drop out of high school or struggle to attend school, struggle to have the kind of like space and opportunity in life to attend a training if it doesn't come with any kind of earning opportunity, which is why earn and learn types of trainings and apprenticeships are so important.
It's so interesting when you talk about you talk about shifting from a negative to a more positive, like asset mindset. And when I think about some of the youth that, the population that drops out of high school and whatnot, sometimes we can be pretty judgmental about what's happening. And so it's interesting to think about some of the challenges that youth might have and the needs that aren't being met. So are there any
Right.
other any
I was
other
going to say, people think of, a bad kid when it might be, and we saw this during the pandemic, a kid who needs to work part-time to support their family. And then that's just not feasible with school as well. And then at some point, the child becomes disconnected from those traditional pathways to a livable wage. So absolutely, it's not always what people think.
Yeah, it's like you actually have some kids that are out there and they're just doing double and triple duty, and so it's how important to make sure they have opportunities. Do you see any? You talk a little bit about some of the trends that are happening. Are there any are there any shifts in these trends that you've noticed?
Yeah, I think that one of so looking at kind of the legislature and the tea leaves, one of the things that we've seen that is really exciting is that there's a lot of momentum around workforce preparation, and that doesn't just mean workforce trainings. The Governor Abbott set out workforce preparation and a strong workforce as one of his legislative priorities, but he also in that declaration acknowledged that a lot of jobs are going to require 4-year degrees in the next 5 to 10 years. And so it's not just about training, although we need those positions as well. It's also about upskilling our workforce. And so we need young people to have lots of different options. And I think that people have really shifted from some people are on the side of every young person has to go to college. For some young people, that's not what they want, or that's not what is fitting into their life and their needs right this minute. But then how can we offer everyone pathways, stackable credentials, that path forward to a wage at which they can be market competitive and thriving. The other thing that I will say that's maybe not so positive is that, I'll say one more positive thing. We're seeing a lot of momentum around school attendance policies and chronic absenteeism, which we know is one of the major ways that students get disconnected. And so defining chronic absenteeism, providing more supports to those students, that would be huge. The kind of negative is we don't want to go backwards on really recriminalizing truancy, penalizing families, and being very punitive with children, where we get more and more kids into alternative education and juvenile justice, which again are those major disconnection points.
Caroline, I know this time is super busy with Texas Ledge, and I know even leading up to it, it got really busy. But I know you've been working in and out of Austin. So are there any specific bills that you or children at risk are advocating for?
Yeah, quite a number actually, but I'll just highlight a couple. So SB 1143, this is a bill that we and our partners have worked on. It would really establish a foundation to better understand how opportunity youth are currently being supported by local workforce development boards. So it would increase the transparency of data and reporting and require that they develop a strategy with metrics around opportunity youth, kind of modeling after some of the policy work that we did with childcare. And from that, you have to know what's going on. You have to know what's working, what's not working, and who's being well supported and who isn't, before we can start to iterate on the things that are working and then maybe build up some resources around the gaps.
Caroline,
And then, go ahead.
no, go ahead.
And then the other thing that I was just going to mention is that, again, one of those kind of foundational bills, House Bill 3844, it would establish a definition for opportunity youth. And, a lot of times when we go into offices and we say opportunity youth, that's a new term for a lot of people. So I think that those two bills are sort of the beginning of getting everyone on the same page as to how important this population is and what more we can do.
Caroline, I want to track back for a minute. You were talking about the importance of having multiple pathways and choices for youth to be able to make the decisions that they want to make for themselves, their lives. That takes a lot when you talk about stackable credits and aligned systems and all that. It takes a lot of collaboration between education, workforce, community organizations, and I'm just what role do you see, or what role do you observe is happening in that these different, I don't know, these different sectors play in trying to make that come to fruition?
I love that question, and you're exactly right. One of the things that is difficult, but also that I love about opportunity youth is that you're bringing everyone together, and it's sort of you have to know something about a lot of different things, a lot of different arenas and issues. The Texas Opportunity Youth Network has been great about setting up collaboratives in a number of different cities. So they're really working together as a unifying voice. There's a policy committee as well that is bringing direct service providers, those who work with the youth directly, and kind of providing some insight into their voice, as well as policy organizations like ourselves, all together to think through some of these solutions. But it's going to be everything from the other day when I was at the Greater Houston Opportunities Collaborative. It was just at my table, housing, juvenile justice, the public library and its health programming, policy advocacy, higher ed, all at one table, right? And we all kind of have to think about how we're intersecting.
Caroline, I love that. And I love that sometimes you don't know all of the organizations that need to be at the table until you look across and realize, oh, the library, maybe
Yeah,
it's in,
yeah.
and hey, and the importance of not being siloed is how we change these, systems and work together to get things done. I love that. I love that example. I'm really curious because how in the world did you get involved in this work?
I think originally we got some. I'm going to misspeak on this. we got some funding to look into this um, from it was one of the big banks, and so we were a little bit, it's outside of our usual age range. And then as we studied more and more, it just intersected with so many other different issue areas. I mean, I originally only worked on human trafficking, and basically, any human trafficking survivor between the ages of 16 to 24, um, or current victim, they're going to be disconnected, right? So basically, all of the young people that I was trying to do work for would have also fallen into this group. And I had started becoming really interested in economic empowerment and human trafficking because ultimately, trafficking survivors want to have the independence and autonomy that has been stripped from them, right? And this was all about economic empowerment and autonomy and young people feeling like they can stand on their own 2 feet with the supports that they need, of course. So it just really came together in a really wonderful way. It's prevention too, right? I mean, when people are not financially vulnerable, they are not vulnerable to people who would harm them, or not as vulnerable. So all of those things made me really interested in it.
I love
Yeah.
that.
So I just remember whenever I first started almost 3 years ago, like, that was one of my first projects is working on an economic, like, empowerment was like, it involved, an opportunity use, and I believe it was, like, funded through Matches Firm, and I just remember I learned so much. Um, so can you talk about some of the other projects that are in the works with children at risk that involved opportunity use? I mean, I know they're truly really busy, with the legislative session. Anything else that we could keep an eye on?
Yeah, absolutely. So our next big project will be uh, trying to work with agencies and staff during the sunset review. So the Department of Family Protective Services, Health and Human Services Commission, um, Juvenile Justice Department, and uh, Texas Workforce Commission, all four of those will all be coming under sunset. Uh, Foster care children aging out and those who have been juvenile justice involved are have a much higher. There's a high correlation between that and disconnection. And then, of course, TWC and the local workforce development boards, they're actually the major distributor of kind of the primary source of funding for opportunity use. So big chance to work with those agencies, work with those sunset members to figure out how we can better support opportunity use. So that's the major thing. That's we're doing a lot of planning around, and we'll be working on over the summer and into the fall.
What an amazing opportunity to impact our communities, and just the return on investment in this kind of preventative work is huge. It's huge. Do you have any,
Yeah, absolutely.
like, I do you have any statistics or know anything about that return on investment? I just know in early childhood, there's this return on investment, and I'm curious if during those opportunity youth ages, if you find that as well.
Well, the only what I could point to is that those who were not persistently disconnected made about $17,000 more at 28 versus those who have been persistently disconnected, which is, more of a return for that individual, but also means certain things for state expenditures, right? The other thing, and this isn't quite to your question, but just to share a few more data points that I think are helpful. 16.4% of opportunity youth are parents. That's about twice the average for that age range, looking at the general 16 to 24-year-old population. Most of those parents are women. 24% receive SNAP assistance, likely far more than that would qualify. 43.4% do not have health insurance, and 50% of 20 to 24-year-olds have no education beyond high school. So no, like 1 or 2 credits at an associate's college, nothing beyond high school. So there's a lot that we can do to support that population, right? And again, that goes back to their basic needs. The one other thing I'll say, you guys didn't ask me, but the one other thing I'll say that, I'm really interested in, again, kind of thinking about getting ahead of the problem, is wraparound services at schools. And as we're looking at this data, we're processing this data, more and more we're seeing that, lack of basic needs is the problem. And so if we're losing wraparound services at our schools, are we going to see higher rates of disconnection? So that's another area that I will be really delving into in the next 6 months to understand that relationship between wraparound services and disconnection.
What an important thing to pay attention to, especially right now, when there's so many things happening.
Yeah.
So if there's one thing that you would want people to remember from this interview, Caroline, what would it be?
I've had the opportunity to meet a number of opportunity youth, and their stories are so inspiring. And I think what I would want people to remember is to think back to when you were 16, 17 years old, and imagine if you just didn't have the help that, hopefully you received at that age. You had no idea how to get into college. You had no idea how to get a job or any of these things. You just came out of the pandemic, and have some empathy for these kids, because once they are provided some guidance, provided some mental health support, provided, meeting some of their basic needs, they just absolutely thrive. I mean, they are giving presentations at these collaboratives. They're going to Washington. They are writing up business plans. So these young people are absolutely inspiring, and we want them to be a part of the community.
Amazing. Caroline, thank you so much for being here with us today. That's Caroline Roberts, Senior Policy Director and General Counsel with Children at Risk, and we will take a musical break and look forward to our next guest, Dr. Data, to find out what that 45% is.
All right. Hi, Mr. Dr. Data. Can you talk to us more about the 45%? We were discussing, we're making guesses. Lynn had a very interesting guess. Lynn, do you want to talk about your guess?
So, Dr. Data, I was thinking birds, because there's a lot of bird migration happening. So I thought maybe the 45% has something to do with how many birds are coming through the state right now.
No bird migration this time, no. But that's one for the future that I need to keep in mind.
All right. Well, Becky, tell them about yours.
Okay, mine was, I have a lot of allergies right now, seasonal allergies. So I was thinking maybe 45% 45% of Texans are experiencing seasonal allergies.
That would be an interesting one too to do for children to see how many have allergies. But no, unfortunately, neither one of them is correct. And it's actually not necessarily good news. The 45% is the percentage of teachers hired last academic year that were certified. So more teachers are now being hired in Texas uncertified than certified.
Ah, that so and how does that why has Texas moved to that model? That's different, right? Like, that's not exactly what we had been doing before.
Right. So there was a law passed in 2015 that allowed school districts to be able to meet the challenges with teacher shortages, right? To say that they can effectively opt out of the certification requirements so that they could hire more teachers in that weren't necessarily going through like a traditional career for a teacher. So rather one that went through the traditional, went to college for education, then met their certification training, but they could come in with industry experience or something else to be able to teach. Because of course, we know in Texas that we have a pretty significant shortage of teachers, especially within, some of the more urban and really rural areas, because, there's a lot of burnout. We don't pay our teachers very well. So this was supposed to cover that gap. But since the passage of the law, we have seen an absolute explosion of uncertified teachers coming into the classroom. So really looking, even at our public school districts, back in 2021, less than 10% of those teachers that were being hired in were uncertified. Now that has gone well above 30%. And what's really driving this trend are the charter schools. The charter schools have really been hiring in quite a few that are uncertified.
That's interesting because I know our last host, Miss Claire Dutre, she used to be a teacher and she was one of those teachers that, she studied education, and then she switched her career to do nonprofit work. And I wonder how it's could be the other way around now, like people who are doing industry jobs and then go into teaching. I'm just wondering how long do you know how long uncertified teachers usually stay? Is their turnover rate lower or, curious if you know that information?
There's a significant turnover rate. And with that being said, too, there's been some research that's come out of Texas Tech that has suggested that when you have uncertified teachers in the classroom, you have a delay in meeting those educational benchmarks by several months for the students. So in response, the legislature now has HB2. So HB2 had passed out of the House and it's currently in the Senate. There's going to be a public hearing about it tomorrow, based on what I'm seeing on the legislative records, which would require there to be certified teachers for teaching many of those core areas. Because it seems as if, and some of the policymakers have noted, that really, yes, there was a gap that had to be met, but potentially there was too much of an overcorrection, if that makes sense. And with that, now we need to kind of push it back a little bit to try to get more certified teachers into the classroom, especially now considering that rather than this really being what was supposed to be helpful is now becoming the norm. Indeed, in some areas, like in northern Texas, almost all of the school districts have opted to be one of these districts of innovation that would allow them to do this. Almost all of them are one of those districts. So becoming, again, the norm rather than the exception.
It's so interesting, trying to, as a community and as a state, we try to solve a problem, and the teacher shortage, that's been no secret. It's been like these crisis levels, and so good intentions that just end up leading to some struggles along the way. And it sounds like there's an impact on the quality of the education that students are getting. I'm curious, what do you what do you see for future academic rates and scores based on what's happening right now in Texas and potentially with HB2?
That's a really interesting question because we not only have this with HB2. So if HB2 were to pass, I do think we would start to go in the right direction. But this is also not to, try to reduce the call of those that have, who are uncertified and wanting to go into teaching, right? They are really doing this to try to fill a real need that our state has, right? So, we shouldn't also, as we're talking about this too, keep in mind as well that those individuals do have something that they can bring to the table. Just the system needs to be reformed and fixed a bit, right? But, the legislature is also talking about replacing STAR testing with a different model. Representative Jeff Leach and whatnot has spoken about, that our testing model within Texas has been detrimental to education. So we'll kind of see what happens, in the future with that. But I would expect that if HB2 were to pass and we were to start to see a bit more of those certified teachers going into these core curriculum areas, I do think we would be seeing education in the right trend in Texas.
I appreciate that you made the statement that we had a problem. We don't want to lose teachers who have come in uncertified. We want to make sure they have that opportunity to continue their education. What will the process be is it in HB2 where it's listed the courses or the subjects that will require certification, or is that to be determined?
Yeah, so actually HB2 allows that. So it offers financial aid. So uncertified teachers in these in-school training programs would actually receive $10,000 as a one-time payment. And those in university or alternative certification programs would get $3,000. And then there would be different fee waivers for special education. So HB2 would actually also try to expand the opportunity for those uncertified teachers to get certified and get on a path where they're able to get that training. So it wouldn't just straight out make the requirement without any kind of other assistance. There would still be a process there to help them get to that certification level.
I have another question because I know we recently worked on a report where we looked at certified bilingual teachers, and it's still like there's a big shortage in that as well. Um, and we were highlighting some of the school districts that were offering these pathways, like where they didn't have to worry about finding a substitute teacher while they took a test, and other things. Do you have any other or have thoughts on best strategies or how to improve the number of teachers entering the workforce or anything like that to maybe, I don't know, and I know this is a big, like, I don't know if Dr. Data could solve all the world's problems, but what are some solutions that come to head?
That it is a huge problem. And I mean, you really try to build into policy incentives to try to make it as easy as possible without, of course, reducing those academic requirements. I think things like HB2 are on the right track, but, it's sort of a $50 million question. How would we be able to do this in terms of policy? There just aren't really, unfortunately, too many easy answers out there other than, trying to provide them with support, trying to make the transitions easier if at all possible. And also really just trying to break down, you were mentioning like languages and whatnot, trying to break down some of those language barriers as well, and really make the area of education be positive and welcoming, because just straight out education as of late has gotten such a bad rap. We're just wholesale seeing fewer individuals want to go into teaching and education. You're seeing, the politicalization, of course, of what's going on in school boards. You're seeing teachers having to be on the front lines much more with assisting with things like mental health care, even physical health care, dealing with, families that are have a lot of needs. And that's a lot to put on one individual, right? So it's going to have to be a wholesale turnaround of just the conversation about how we consider education so that we can make it, again, a place where people want to work.
Well, thank you so much for being here. I know this is an important discussion. It was slightly sad, like you said, but still super educational, and we still got to learn stuff about what's happening in the ledge, as well as a lot of stuff that's happening in Texas.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
See you next week. And then next up, we'll have Rebecca George for regular segment Hip Speak.
Me pierdo y nadie le pidió, pero estamos aquí. Yo no sé si fue Dios, ay, pero creo que lo vi. Cuando me besaste, no sé cuándo llegaste, pero no quiero que te vayas. No se contraste con todo este desastre que me toca vivir. La cura del miedo la tienes tú. Veo todo claro aunque se fue la luz. Ey, aprovechame hoy. Ey, ey, y yo no quiero ver el mundo arder, pero algo tan bonito no se puede perder. El reloj no quiere morder.
All right. Well, it looks like Rebecca George is not here yet, but we do have a lot to discuss. We just finished Texas tour, and Lynn was one of our speakers and helped do the community conversation. So, Lynn, can you tell us more about the Texas tour?
Becky, I have so much to share. So much to share. We've been in Fort Worth and Lubbock and Amarillo and Brownsville and McAllen and Dallas and Austin and San Antonio and El Paso and Midland and Houston and Tyler. And we did a statewide event. Incredible. Incredible. So every fall, we have the opportunity to go to each of these communities in person. And every spring, we have the opportunity to have a virtual stop at each of these communities, and we talk about all things early childhood that are trends happening across the state and also what's happening locally.
Yeah, and I had a privilege to attend a couple of them. And they're also great. I think we learn a lot of what's going on in early childhood education spaces that we normally wouldn't if we don't have those general city stops. Because it's one thing to do statewide, but it's more personal whenever you get to talk about your own city and what's going on in that city, you know?
Yeah, so for example, there are trends that happen across the state. So across the state, we need more investment in early childhood. Across the state, we're really just like Dr. Data was just sharing about the public education system. We have some of the same struggles in early ed. We don't have enough teachers. How can we figure this out? They don't get paid a livable wage. So that's a trend across the state. However, there are also some things specific to different localities. For example, in El Paso, being a border community, they're right up against actually another state, New Mexico. New Mexico's invested recently a lot more in early education. They pay their teachers more. Guess where the Texas early childhood teachers go to work? They sure do. They cross right over the border to go make a little bit more money. So they're struggling even more than other communities are with the teacher shortage.
Yeah, I thought about that. I was like, oh, there's there's some parallels there. And in my head, I'm like, Texas should just invest more, on both ends, you know? They're both critical to our future.
Guess what? Right now, there's a historical opportunity. There's $100 million, but HB 500, $100 million investment in early education to help support low-income children be able to access supports for early education. And so right now that's being heard by a conference committee. And so, call your representatives and let them know that you support HB 500 to get that extra $100 million so more children get served in Texas and more families can work.
Yeah, I'm definitely calling after today after this radio show. So my representative's gonna have an earful. And it looks like we have Brianna Derry here from Children at Risk. She's making a special stop here.
What? How exciting! Bree is here! Yay!
Hi, I am so happy to be here right now. Thank you for having me.
Bree, thanks for being here. How's it going out there for you?
I don't know. Can you hear the echo? We are just finishing cleaning and packing my house right now, and I am in a very fun spot. I just saw Susanna Young, the one and only, who has been a co-host here many times. But yeah, going well, going well. I have some great terms for you guys today. Are you ready for Hipsy?
Okay, ready for it. I was hoping you were going to bring it,
Okay.
Bree. Of course you are.
Well, I absolutely will. You know to hit us around. But my first term for you is Hosier's Yell. Have you heard that one before? It's brand new.
No. I'm all I can think of is basketball right now. Basketball,
I like it. I like it. Becky,
Hosiers.
any thoughts from you?
Well, unfortunately, I am Gen Z and I'm also chronically online, so I will refrain from it. But
You
I'll say I know who Hosier is, and this is before me knowing what that means. So I assumed it had to do something with him, and I also
Mhm.
thought he's very like a hipster. I think of 2010s when I think of him. I think of me in middle school. So I was thinking something like, oh, either like you're a little bit behind or you're acting like a hipster.
Ooh, I do love that you mentioned that like middle school vibe, honestly, because it kind of connects like the emotions you feel there. You know how big they are and how raw and how just inspiring and big and new the world is. That's kind of the emotion that this calls on in a way. So Hosier's Yell is a TikTok trend, of course, because we can't not have a TikTok trend. And so it's that moment when it's awe-inspiring, it's big, it's beautiful. It's like you're standing on a mountaintop for the first time, or you're paddling through the canals of Venice for the first time. So very aesthetically pleasing, very wonderful, and very just, you know?
I love that so much. I love that so like those like those amazing moments that you don't really even have a word for. So I know this might be
Exactly.
like really I need to know how to spell this. Do you have any idea? Like how do you spell Hosier's Yell?
Yes, so it's gonna be 2 words. It's Hozier, just like the R, just like Becky said, and then yell, Yell, and it's referring to a part of the song where it's just like this beautiful crescendo of a note, and it's very distinct. I think it's an older song reference, I believe, but it has come back in trend as all nostalgic things do. But yeah,
I love that. Hey, guess who
amazing.
just walked in? Miss Jenny Walker. Can you believe it?
Hello, Jenny. I love it. So before I let her go, I'm gonna do one more term for you guys. Is that okay?
Absolutely.
Fantastic. So my last term, and you can ask Jenny as well, I'm curious what she says, but it's yassified. So Yassified.
Yassified? I'm gonna say, okay, yassified. Like it's like I just yassified that. It's a
Ooh,
it's a I yassified something or something has been yassified. Like it's a yes, like
and
sassy. Like I yassified that. That's I'm going with that.
I love that answer, Lynn. Becky, do you know already? I assume you do.
I do, but how would I let me just slightly describe it. Um it's as if whenever I saw my boyfriend's room for the first time and I was like, this is disgusting. Like in terms like he has no decorations in his room. In terms like to me that if you ever see my office, it has a bunch of I'm very maximalist. So whenever I saw his room that was very minimalist, I was like, let me justify it.
Yes, queen, you've got it. That's beautiful. Um, and as I just said, it kind of goes back to that term, yeah, in that way. So it's just like you guys said, I yassified it, she yassified that, etc. You are adding an aesthetic, almost Instagram filter like appearance to something. My favorite example of this, it was a sentence that someone gave me, and they were like, "Oh, that politician totally yassified their photo online." I'm like, ooh, ouch, but I can see it. But I love Becky's example, and that is all I have for Hip Speak this week.
Yeah, I love
That
it. I added throw pillows, I added blankets, I added shelves with like cute little stuff. So I was like, it was so bland to me. So yeah, I love that word.
Boys
I
are
love
lucky to
it.
have us in their lives. They really are.
So people used to say like, I'm going to zhuzh it up a little bit, or they tricked it out, or like those. So now it's like yesified. Adding that to my
Exactly.
vocabulary today, y'all.
I can't wait to hear you say it, Lynn.
All right. Thanks so much, Bree, for joining us. We really are so appreciative that you came and visited us.
Absolutely. I'm happy to be here, and I just can't wait to hear today's conversation. Have a great day, y'all.
Hi, Jenny. Are you on the line?
Yes, I'm here.
Oh, perfect. Well, welcome to Growing Up in America. How are you doing today?
I am wonderful. Thank you.
All right. Well, for our listeners who are not familiar, can you tell us briefly about Literacy Texas and your mission?
Yeah, Literacy Texas is a nonprofit organization that serves other adult learning programs, things like public libraries, nonprofit organizations. We support correctional facilities, any entity that might have an adult learning um, component to their programming. And our organization provides those other organizations with networking opportunities, professional development training opportunities. We do some advocacy work and also provide resources for those organizations so that they can help adult learners best provide for themselves and their families in Texas.
Jenny, I was looking at the website earlier, and I was fascinated with all that you have on there. So I definitely encourage our listeners to go and seek out the website to learn more about all of those things. Literacy today, it just seems like year after year, we continue to hear about this as being a challenge. I know locally, our literacy levels in the DFW area are pretty abysmal. We're really trying to affect those. What do you think is the biggest challenge of adult and family literacy today?
Our biggest challenge is really the major underestimation of how big the problem is. I think that a lot of folks take for granted that there is a large number of folks in the state of Texas who do not have basic adult education skills. And when we look at statistics, 28% of adults in the state of Texas are at or below a first grade level. And that is a lot of men and women who are in need of the work that these organizations are providing. If we look a little bit higher, about 40% of Texans are at a third grade or below level, and these literacy statistics, and this low literate society that we have in Texas really impacts a lot of things. Our ability to boost economic development, because we need uneducated workforce to be able to fill positions, as we're doing a great job in Texas of recruiting new companies, and we need an educated workforce to fill those roles. We also, will perpetuate this low literacy cycle with the next generation of Texans if we don't intercede here with this population of adults. We've done a great job in Texas of really pushing forward a lot of great initiatives for early childhood education. But a big challenge is when we send all these little kids home with books to read with their parents, but their parents themselves don't have the skills required to help support those children. It really just perpetuates that cycle. And so we are really trying to intercede here and make a difference with the adults in our communities so that we can ultimately impact what's happening with the children in their homes. And so it is a really big problem in Texas. And when I go out and I talk to folks about literacy, I think people just don't understand kind of the magnitude of what is happening here and how it impacts so many other systems in our state. And so
Yeah.
that I think is the biggest challenge for me, and also the breadth of literacy itself. It's not just reading and writing, which is what most people associate with literacy, but one of the major issues right now in literacy is digital and computer literacy. Everything is going online. All of the social service applications, like SNAP benefits and things, and also job applications are all online. And we have a
So I
lot of
think
folks in.
that's so
We have.
interesting that you mentioned like the like the digital literacy and that part of it.
Mhm.
So and today we've talked about early childhood and opportunity youth, and there's this like through line now we're talking about adults. And
Yes.
but tell us more about some of those barriers and some of what you're noticing in terms of digital literacy and how that shows up in an adult life.
Yeah, so a lot of the applications that are available now, most of them, in fact, are digital applications, SNAP benefits, all of our social services that we have in Texas, as well as job applications. Those are all pushed online. And when folks, particularly those in our rural areas who are in some cases just getting broadband access into their communities, they're already well behind the curve. And so if there's someone who hasn't been in the computer space, if maybe they work in manufacturing or they've been a stay-at-home mom or they've had, just even 5 years out of the traditional workforce scene, they're really behind because technology just kind of flips on end every other year, it seems. And we have found that even vocabulary like terms like upload, if they're not familiar with that vocabulary, that is like a foreign word to a lot of the folks who are not used to using digital and computer literacy skills. And when they go into these applications and they have to upload a copy of their resume or they have to upload a photo ID, it is a real barrier for them. And I think sometimes there might be a disconnect between the folks who, make the decisions to move things online, and the folks who those applications are created for. And so we're trying to bridge that gap. We're trying to be advocates for men and women in our communities who need those resources, and help kind of help our business leaders and our state leaders understand the importance of supporting this work, because the organizations that we serve, those public libraries, those nonprofits, those church ministries that have a literacy component, they're the ones on the front lines teaching those skills, because otherwise there's nobody else to teach them. And so the work that we do is incredibly important, and it's something that just not a lot of folks realize is a need, and that we're doing this work.
And Jenny, I have a question because we've also been focusing on the Texas legislature. So my question is like, what are some of the important policy changes or investments, or how can policy makers help reduce that literacy gap?
So I am funded by the Texas Workforce Commission, a division from of them called the Adult Education and Literacy. So I would really push questions about policy to them. We're kind of in a space where we don't talk about specific policies, and I will defer that to someone from TWC.
Okay, no worries. We are right around the time of ending, so we always like to have our last guest answer really fun questions. There should be the speed round, um, so I'll start off with the first one. What was your dream job as a kid?
Uh, as a kid, I really wanted to be an astronaut. I was in first grade when, the Challenger happened, and I thought I want to continue what they were supposed to be doing up there. And so that was kind of my first, my dream was to be an astronaut.
The last thing you binge watched or couldn't stop reading?
My last binge watch was Love on the Spectrum. So good. So good.
Oh, so precious too. I love watching that as well.
Me
Oh,
too. I just
Yeah.
love it.
if you could if you instantly could fix one problem facing Texas kids today, what would it be?
If I could solve one problem for Texas kids, I would say that if our communities could engage in some wraparound support services for those who are in poverty. Um, we know that what people who are in poverty have a ton of issues. It's not just money. There's usually substance use involved, mental health involved, low literacy involved, just um, a whole slew of challenges that they have to overcome. And I think that when families have a holistic approach to supporting all of those needs, um, they have the opportunity. Those kids have the opportunity to grow up in a well-supported, loving environment where the parents are on track for success, which allows the children to be on track for success. And so I think just addressing some of those root issues in the family would make a huge difference for a lot of children.
Well, that's all the time we have today. Thank you so much, Jenny. We learned a lot about literacy in Texas today. We appreciate you being here.
Yes, thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
All right. Thanks so much for listening to Growing Up in America by Children at Risk. If you enjoyed our discussion, please tune in next Wednesday during our new airtime of 9 to 10 a.m. And be sure to check out our new episodes of our podcast each Monday at noon. This is Becky, and talk to you soon.
I hopped off the plane at LAX with a dream, my cardigan. Welcome to the land of fame excess. Am I gonna